19 and a half years old. I was almost 20. I competed about 2 Mr. Michigans at that point without drugs. I was just about to enter my first Mr. America contest, and I decided that it was time to do it. I just didn't think about drugs haphazardly. It was something that I talked to many doctors about, steroids and what they considered their effects were, the possible harmful effects, and all the doctors told me I was crazy. Don't do that ever. There was a few sports medicine doctors that I spoke with that gave me more rational insight into the steroids and what they could do or couldn't do, and what was really happening in the sport of bodybuilding and swimming, Olympics, and football. And so I started back then. I remember taking some Dianabol back then in the old days, back in 72 or 3, and a long time ago. And it did work to a certain degree, and did help me give me that wax job that I wanted. But it started being great, my whole appearance. They gave me the legs that I had, or the look that I had, or the posing that I had. It did work in terms of recuperating faster, and it helped a lot. Glycogen supercompensation process, holding more glycogen and water in the muscle. Steroids helped that way, but it wasn't this overall magic blanket. No, it wasn't like drugs equals success. No. Okay, I don't mean to imply that. I'm just in my quest to be honest. Sometimes I come across that way, but it's not my intention. Believe me. I believe in a low-fat diet. Low-fat, high-carbohydrate, moderate protein. I've used every diet in the books in business pretty much over the course of the last decade. I should say 15 years. I went on low carbohydrates and high fat. I won the 78 universe on high fat and low carbohydrates. But my best approach, my best procedure has been high carbohydrates, roughly 55% carbohydrates, 35% protein, and 15 or 10% fat, right around there. I may bring the fat to 15% occasionally during the off season, but carbohydrates are always real high. I think there's something to switching metabolisms. I think that works for me. To go a little higher fat, and then to cut the fat out and go a little lower fat. I find that it makes my metabolism work better, and I find that I can lose and gain weight, more importantly, losing fat more efficiently. By doing the same thing all the time, eating the same amount of calories all the time, my body doesn't work anymore. It stays as sort of a need to shock it. To eat the same way all the time, the exact same number of calories, I think is limiting. It will hurt you in the long run. Yeah, I measure my body fat occasionally. I was down to 7% fat about 2 months ago. I usually carry around 9-10% body fat. And I can push it down to 3 if I really get ready for a show and focus and commit myself. But I'll do that by having my calories higher, so I have something to drop. You'll find if you're dieting for a long period of time and you're losing fat successfully, your metabolic rate tends to slow down. I'm sure you know that. And one of the things I found successful is by eating more calories every few days. My metabolism goes up to burn the more food I'm eating, and then when I drop my calories the next day, the metabolism still stays high. And that really works for me, especially during the off season. I never keep my calories real low. Aerobics I work very well for me, and bike riding, running is almost too effective. Although I do aerobics only before contest or before that time of the season. Usually about 3 months out before a show, and I usually do that once a week, and then maybe once every 4 days. That's enough for my body type. Anything too much of anything is bad. Too much food is bad. Too much aerobics, you get lean and stringy, and you lose muscle. And I think you've got to be real careful, because bodybuilding is an abnormal condition. Getting in shape in the first place is abnormal. You consider that most of the people are normal. And it's very fragile. It's easy to lose. If you don't eat right for a while, don't sleep right for a while, or don't train right for a while, or train too much aerobic work for a while, you will lose the muscle very quickly. And there are certain things you can do to avoid that. The blanket statement would be, too much of anything is bad. It's kind of counterproductive. What I'm doing right now, I train a day, eat a day. Train a day, eat a day. I don't ever train 2 days in a row. I find that works very well for me. I trained every day in the past. I mean, back in the old days, I say old days, I mean 1987, 1980 to 87. I trained 4 days on, 1 day off. 4 days on, 1 day off. I always looked better when I went to England, didn't train as much, and ate less. I'd come to England and get in great shape because I was on the road, I wasn't sleeping, the jet lag, and losing fat, so I wasn't eating very much, but I was training, but not training as hard. And I think it's important to recognize recuperation time. Higher now. I think the way I see it, and the way I'd have to explain it to you, is there's this optimum training space, basically. You always want to stay in that optimum training zone, okay, where your growth is happening, where you're recuperating substantially and get stronger in the gym the next day, and you recuperate, get stronger again. You want to stay there. What happens though, it's easy to drift into undertraining or to drift into overtraining. And your body won't stay the same. Your body never really stays in one area of that optimum training zone. But by upping the frequency or the intensity or the volume of your training, you can start climbing, moving towards overtraining, but your body will recuperate. By putting more stress on your body will start recuperating to more stress. After about 3 weeks, you can almost get stronger doing more. But after a while, you go into overtraining, and then you get weaker and smaller. And prior to getting to that point, you got to cut back on your training, cut back on the frequency, cut back on the volume, and go towards that way. Prior to getting, and you grow doing less. So when I came to England, I was always on that down cycle. But before you get into undertraining, you've got to pick it up again and do more again. So your body, you're always doing more or doing less and growing in the process. Does it make sense? Yeah. And I've always done that, and I explained it many different ways. But for purposes of hopefully simpleness, I'm explaining it that way right now. Your body never stays the same. It's always wants to go towards a lower level, homeostasis they call it, but in order to trick the body and make the body respond and acquire more muscle tissue, you have to either do more or do less over usually about 3-week cycles. I'll do more for 3 weeks and I'll do less for 3 weeks. But as you get in better and better shape, that window gets shorter. Now instead of having this window like this, it's like this, okay? Which makes it hard now because you're in great shape. It's easy to overtrain, it's easy to undertrain. But that's when you get into knowing what works for you and instinct and how to juggle your workouts along. And I can explain different sets and rep procedures. I can explain doing high reps versus low reps, and there's a reason to do that. But more importantly, there's a reason to look at that optimum training zone. And that's always been my feeling about training. I've done that instinctually. I think you have to learn the education. You have to learn about sets and reps and the education of bodybuilding, but knowing what to do based upon what feels right has been that's what's important to us. Training is an extension of your personality, usually, if you're really into instinct. Instinct is an important, interesting point, and you have to use that to your advantage. Sometimes you can get misled by that statement. Instinct could mean to some people, well, I'll train tomorrow. I don't feel like training today, I'll train the next day. And instinct can be counterproductive too. I think you have to sometimes go to the gym and push through that and realize, oh my God, I can train harder today. I can do more today. And I'm stronger than I thought I would be and have a great workout. And a lot of times, psychologically, you can play with your mind, doesn't work the way you want it to work, and you can train beyond that. I've always approached training that way, and with really thinking about that zone, if you will. And when you first start doing more sets and more reps and heavier weights and more workouts more often, start getting weaker, and your first inclination is to go, oh, I'll do less. Rather than doing less right away, push it for a week and a half. And pretty soon, you get stronger doing more. And then when you start hitting the wall a little bit, inside of 3 weeks, cut back, and you'll grow doing less. But again, I think you should do reps and you should do heavy weights as well. Both kinds of training. One day might be heavy reps, and one day might be heavy weights. It works very well for me also, especially considering my fiber type, my body type, which is more white fiber. And although I believe in addressing fiber type, definitely. But more importantly, I believe in addressing that zone first.